When I was a little kid, the two things I loved most in life were Godzilla and NES games. So naturally, when Godzilla Monster of Monsters came out, it was like a dream come true. Well, almost. To sum it up, most of the game revolved around getting through very repetitive outer space levels while smashing up tanks and jets, then fighting against Godzilla's monster enemies. Overall, it was pretty mediocre, but back then, I didn't care. When I got the game as a present for my 10th birthday, I played it night and day as much as I could. Unfortunately, I had traded the game for Amagon a year later, much to my regret when I found out what that game was like. Recently, I had bought a new NES system, and through a lot of hunting and asking around, my friend finally managed to find a copy of Godzilla Monster of Monsters. I was pumped to play my favorite childhood game. It never even occurred to me to ask where he found it. He also gave me some other games like Legend of Zelda, Bomberman, and some stupid thing called Action 52, but Godzilla had to come first. So I started the game, and the nostalgia came flooding back like a tidal wave. Godzilla's 8-bit theme song flooded proudly through the speakers, and I was soon grinning like an idiot. Some people laugh at me for playing such outdated games, but I've never had as much enjoyment for any other games than those on the NES. Those games take me back to when things were much simpler, more safe. But after what's happened with this game, I don't have those feelings anymore. I forgot how quick the fun of smashing things as Godzilla wore off in the scrolling levels. The game bombards you with bullets and things crashing into you from every direction, and you're too big to avoid most of them. Although my excitement had worn down some, it wasn't long at all before I got to my first boss battle. My first opponent was Ghidorah, an obscure squid kaiju who had never been in a Godzilla movie. The most annoying thing about fighting Ghidorah is that he always backs you into a corner and starts smacking you with his tentacle, and you're unable to move at all until he gets off you. This move doesn't even do any damage, but it can stall you until the timer runs out and you have to start the fight over. It's as annoying as it sounds. And of course, he did it when I fought him. Only for some reason, this time, it caused the game to glitch up. Because once he started smacking me, he never stopped. The timer's supposed to end the fight in about 40 seconds, but this lasted for nearly 5 minutes. After a while, the graphics started to mess up, with little red blocks all over the place. Which was weird, but I just took the game out, blew on it, and started again. I wasn't about to let a little glitch stand in my way. So I started again, and this time defeated Ghidorah and the level's other boss monster, Mogira, without any problems. So then it was on to the next planet, Mars. I browsed around on the board and found something interesting. Where Varen's piece should have been, there was instead a piece representing Titanosaurus. There were only 10 kaiju in the game, and Titanosaurus was not one of them. Or so I thought. Maybe Titanosaurus was originally intended to be in the game, but was swapped out with Varen for some reason? So I got very excited. Not only was I playing my favorite game, but I was playing a prototype of some sort with a new monster. Needless to say, I ran through the levels as fast as I could to see Titanosaurus in action. I fought Ghidorah again and beat him before he could do his tentacle smack, but this time the glitch started happening when he died. Ghidorah's sprite didn't sink to the bottom, but it seemed to be devoured by the glitch, and his eyes started spawning all over the screen. I know now that these glitches with Ghidorah were my first warning sign that something was very wrong with this game. But I ignored it, and proceeded on to fight Mogira, who this time had a glitch of his own. He was twice the size he should have been, which startled me. He was also considerably harder to beat than usual, which is to say not at all, but soon I had defeated him also. And when he died, yet another glitch happened. This happened extremely fast, so I was lucky to get a screen cap of it at all, but what happened was the giant Mogira sprite started to shatter and melt. At this point, I was about to fight Titanosaurus, and I was worried as to what kind of glitches would happen this time, but to my surprise, he looked just fine. Although all the game's bipedal monsters were the same height, Titanosaurus was a bit taller. But since Titanosaurus actually was taller than Godzilla at his film debut, I thought that was kinda cool. After a very fun fight with the monster that wasn't supposed to be in the game, I took over the enemy base and proceeded not to Jupiter like normal, but instead to Pathos.
Pathos was the same as Jupiter in layout, except the board was dark blue rather than green. The first thing I noticed was that all the usual level icons have been replaced by a blue one and some kind of a orange honeycomb shape. There was one icon that had been part of the general icon shape, but I didn't play much thought of it. I checked the other side of the board to see what the new monster. Instead of Hedorah, it was Biollante. But that could have been right. Godzilla vs. Biollante didn't come out until 1989, and this game was made in 1988. Perhaps Toto put Biollante in the game to build excitement for the movie next year? But changed their minds? I tried to rationalize the game's abnormalities any way I could, but this would prove to be truthful. Pathos Map song was the first new song I heard in the game. Like most of the new songs, it was hard to describe on the top. It started out slow and suspenseful, much slower than any song in the game, but every 12 seconds or so, there would be a loud clashing sound, and the tempo changed. It was like a composer randomly played parts from parts of the songs with the same instruments. I moved Godzilla over to one of the many blue rock icons, but had to replace the jungle icon to the level. The level resembled the Blue Mountain Range with a blood-red planet in the sky, but there is something odd about the mountains. They had shredded paper looked. I thought at first maybe the glitch had affected it, but it looked like far too intentional. I quickly noticed something about this new level. There's no enemies at all. Not even obstacles. I should also mention that this was the point meter started to become glitch beyond comprehension, but it doesn't bother me much. I never keep up with game points, so without having to focus on anything, I listen to the music while walking through the level unposed. The music had a sorrowful feel to it. It would have been rather pleasant, but I had it in a normal game. The level went on for 3 screens, but with no obstacles around, I finished it very quickly. The other levels had the same type, but if any enemies appeared, but there were none. There was a little else to be seen in the Blue Mountains, so I tried the other type level. I started with the orange level. My eyes were assaulted by the Gerasic background of the Termer's orange eyes. The sky was the same as the ground, so I assumed this game was indicating this level taking place in the cave. The only enemies here were meant to go spawn, but as you can see, the little bastards were everywhere. The music certainly didn't help, with mixtures of screeching sounds and loud drum beats that sounded like a monster theme in a horror film. After completing it, I tried to avoid playing through any more of these levels whenever I could. The map was short, so it was only a few minutes before I headed towards the rematch with Godzilla and Magura. But this time, their sparks and attack patterns were vastly different. I thought Magura first. The Magura was replaced with a flying machine with a slight resemblance to a Pandagola alien, but it was a bit like flying Mothra. only it moved with a lot more grace. It attacked by spinning its front tentacles like a corkscrew. And it still had an eye beam, except now it fired from the drill. This leaky aberration had replaced Godzilla, and the new beast was more of a challenge. It would run and jump at the fast pace, constantly swinging its arms, making it hard to get close. And of course, it tried to pin me in the corner with as much annoying as resolve as ever. I defeated it using the combination of tailwinds and heat beams spamming. I defeated them and I was going to fight the Titanosaurus, but then I started to fight Titasaurus, but was nowhere to be seen, and the game was simply back to the map with the Titasaurus piece now missing. Now no one was left to fight, but now Baliante. So I emergently started the battle. I was quite surprised that Baliante started the fight in her rose form. She was an immortal and used tentacle to keep me away from the main body, which took the most damage. As I expected, as she turned into her final form after taking enough damage, the sprite looked pretty damn good for 8-bit. The battle technique was the same, except now the Biollante could move and a bit slower than any other monster. Being hit by a tentacle did more damage now, and Biollante could do an acid spit, which I managed to avoid by jumping in the landscape. Not much more difficult than to being in Titanosaurus. But it only took 2 rounds. But when Biollante was gone, the music had stopped. And there was a new icon replacing the bass. This icon wasn't there before I beat Biollante. It resembled a red triple mask. I had a feeling of dread when I saw it. But since it was replaced the bass, it must be the only way to exit Paphos. I moved Godzilla to the square and started the level. It was a hellish looking place with no sky and the flickering fire in the background. The fire looked far more advanced than anything I'd seen on the NES. There was music in the form of a slow, steady drum sound resembling a heartbeat. All the text on the top of a screen and a life bar was gone. In their place was a single bit of a text in the middle of a screen that says run. A feeling of dread had instincted. I curiously walked through the level, but like the blue mountains where there were no enemies. I paced around for a minute before thinking run for what? From what? The first time it hit me, I didn't even see it. I heard a noise outside of my room. I turned back to see if anything fell. When I looked back at Godzilla was dying. I figured it's just been a glitch, but I wasn't going to play through the game without Godzilla, so I restarted the game and went to the password screen. I have never mentioned how creepy the password screen music is. If you play the game, you know what I mean. But it doesn't all fit the mood of a game. It's more like something from a horror game. Maybe they made it like that so kids wouldn't cheat? I was quite annoyed at this point, because I thought I was going to have to fight all the monsters again, but that didn't happen. The game started me off right where I was before I started the red face level, so I tried again, making sure to pay attention this time. That's when I heard the low bellowing sound, but when I saw it, this thing. Did you know that feeling when when you feel like you're in extreme danger? You started to recoil and to tense up as the enderline flows through your veins and your nerves start to feel very cold. That's the feeling I had when I took this screen cap. I haven't seen all the Godzilla movies. I'm pretty damn sure this was never in any of them. It had to be something in the creature's made up. But what kind of a sick fuck would put this in a children's game? By the sheer of a dumb luck, or perhaps an adrenaline boost, I managed to run fast enough to get away from it. It ran very fast, so that if you were almost certainly going to die. And when I say die, I mean your monster gets killed instantly if the creature touched them. Once I had gotten back to the map, I was so afraid that I was extremely tempted to shut the game off and try to pretend that this never happened. I couldn't believe what I had just seen. It couldn't have been real. Even if I wanted to continue, I still had to get the Mothra to get through this level. But as I stay inactive on the screen map for a few minutes, my fear was replaced by burning curiosity. What the hell just happened? What was the rest of the game was like? I had to beat this level with Mothra, and that it was on to the next world. But when I moved to Mothra to the red phase, the game registered it as me being the level. I was quite relieved. I tried to prepare myself for the next world. Trace.